We're always taught that limitations are, well, they're roadblocks, right? Things that stop us. But what if that's just completely wrong? Today, we're going to dive into this really powerful idea. What if our biggest constraints could actually become our greatest advantages? Seriously, think about it for a second. When you have all the time in the world, all the money, all the resources, what happens? We usually just take the easy, obvious path, the one everyone else takes. But when you're cornered, when your back's against the wall and your options are slim, that's when the real creativity sparks. So what if the secret to cracking our biggest problems isn't about having more, but actually having less? So that's what we're going to explore today. We're going to start with the core idea here, this philosophy of turning limits into fuel. Then we'll check out a crazy story about a tiny island that, well, basically struck digital gold by accident. And finally, we'll see how that exact model could be used to tackle one of the most ambitious ideas out there. So yeah, let's dive in. All right, so the main idea we're riffing on today comes from this fantastic book, A Beautiful Constraint by Adam Morgan and Mark Bairden. And the whole thing is about a huge shift in how you think. Basically, learning to see constraints not as these frustrating walls, but as the very thing that sparks real ingenuity. And the best part is, this isn't some high-level abstract theory just for CEOs in a boardroom. Nope. The book frames it as a super practical guide for literally anyone dealing with a lack of time or money or resources. It's all about finding those clever ways forward by, making more with less. So the book lays out this really simple, but man, it's a profound journey. It starts with what they call the victim stage, and we all know this one, right? We blame the constraint. Oh, I can't do this because of X. Then some of us graduate to being a neutralizer. We find a way around the problem. But the real magic, the goal, is to become a transformer. That's when you can look at that same limitation and ask, okay, how can this thing that's holding me back actually make the final result better? Okay, so that all sounds good in theory, but how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, let's look at a perfect, and I mean perfect example of a constraint that morphed into this unbelievable opportunity. Let me introduce you to Anguilla, a tiny little Caribbean island that basically hit the jackpot, completely by accident. See, way back in the 90s, Anguilla got assigned its country code domain, which just happened to be .ai. For decades, I mean decades, it was nothing, just a digital footnote nobody cared about. And then the AI boom happened. After ChatGPT came on the scene, registrations for .ai domains just went completely vertical. We're talking from about 144,000 in 2022 to a forecast of over 1 million by 2025. Just boom. And the money that came with it, it's just staggering. Get this, in 2023 alone, those two little letters, .ai, brought in $32 million for the island's government. And this wasn't some genius master plan they cooked up. It was a complete and total happy accident, born from a name they were given decades ago. Now, to really wrap your head around the scale here, let's put that $32 million bucks into context. The entire island has a population of only about 15,000 people. For a community that size, that kind of money isn't just nice to have, it is absolutely game-changing. I mean, before this whole AI thing took off, Anguilla's economy was pretty much all about tourism. That's what kept everything going. But now, all of a sudden, this .ai domain revenue has become this huge new pillar, making up a fifth of all government revenue. It's literally funding everything from new airports to better healthcare. So a success story like this, it really gets you thinking, doesn't it? It raises this fascinating question. Could we take this model, using a digital asset to create public funds, and apply it to solve even bigger problems? I'm talking about huge things, like funding a universal basic income. And just in case you're not familiar with it, universal basic income, or UBI, is pretty much what it sounds like. It's the idea that every single citizen gets a regular, no-strings-attached payment from the government. The whole point is to create a financial safety net, right? To boost stability and help pull people out of poverty. And boom, right there is our next beautiful constraint. Because the biggest, most obvious problem with UBI has always been, how do you pay for it? It's incredibly expensive. But the opportunity, taking a page right out of Anguilla's playbook, is maybe, just maybe, we could create a brand new digital asset, a new domain where all the revenue is dedicated to funding a project just like this. But of course, it's never quite that simple, is it? The moment you think you have a solution, you slam right into the next constraints. And honestly, this is where things start to get really creative. So here's the wall we hit.
The big organization that governs all the internet domains, ICANN, they have this rule. And the rule says that those super valuable two-letter domains, like .ai, .tv, .co, are reserved strictly for countries. You can't just make up a new one. So, that kind of looks like a dead end, right? A classic victim moment where you just throw your hands up.
But wait, remember, we're trying to be transformers here. We gotta find that creative path forward. And it turns out there's actually a precedent. There's a known exception to that country code rule, and it's for language communities. The perfect example is the .cat domain, which is for the Catalan language and culture. That is our way in. That's the workaround. Okay, so this precedent is everything. The proposal on the table is to create a .ia domain. The IA stands for Interlingua, which is this international language designed to be understood by over 1 billion Romance language speakers around the world. So, think about it. Just like .ai became the go-to for artificial intelligence, .ia could become the domain for things like intelligence augmentation or inter-agent communication. And all that revenue could go towards funding these massive social projects.
But, okay, what if we could push this thinking even one step further? I mean, going through ICANN is one way to do it, but there's a totally different approach that just bypasses all the old rules entirely. And that, my friends, is Web3.
So let's just compare the two paths for a second. The traditional system we all know is centralized, and you're paying those annoying renewal fees every single year. But with Web3 platforms, you can create new domains that actually live on the blockchain. What does that mean? It means you buy it once, and you own it. Forever. No more renewal fees. No one in the middle acting as a gatekeeper. It is a fundamentally different way of thinking about ownership.
And really, that brings us full circle. From the whole philosophy of A Beautiful Constraint, to the wild, accidental success of Anguilla, all the way to this creative plan for funding something like UBI, the pattern is pretty clear, right? The most groundbreaking solutions, they don't usually come from having everything you need. They come from getting really, really creative with what you don't have. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What other huge, seemingly impossible problems could we solve if we just learned to see our constraints not as walls, but as doorways?